box. But
I'm gonna put the agenda up right now.
yeah, there you go. Bye, friends. Oh, yeah.
Maybe
Do it all.
They go every time if you want. I got it. Okay, yeah, okay. Let's call the meeting to order. Glad everybody could make it today. I'll call roll. Karen Donnelly. Here. Here. Dick. Scott Reese. Here. Jana Mulder here. Here. Jamie. Here. And Sarah. Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Great. Okay, we have no board communications and we just took roll, Rachel, and we have a quorum.
Perfect.
And could you see if anybody's on Zoom?
Here's not.
Okay. So I think we can go ahead and get started on discussion items. We have a special guest today, John Icolangeli. He is the city planner. And he's been working a lot with planning commission and zoning recently. He came to Parks Board and helped us out with some ordinance stuff there. And he has kindly agreed to be with us today to talk a little bit about surveys. And I don't know, is there anything you could just like start us off with just on a general basis when you decide you need to survey something? What are all the things you think about?
Well, typically on park and rec surveys, we run them on the internet based. And then we have printed copies at City Hall. We usually ask a series of questions that revolve around demographics in terms of age of the respondent, how many people in the household. In resort communities like Harbor Springs, we would ask, are you full-time resident, are you seasonal? We'd also ask questions like, identify if you're seasonal, identify like the top 3 or 4 months that you're in the community, so we have an idea. And then we ask questions relative to recreational activities that they like to participate in. And then we have questions on each one of the parks relative to what their experiences at the parks, what their expectations are. In terms of what type of facilities they would like to see.
Okay.
In some cases, we also ask people, because sometimes the surveys go outside of the city, we ask people to identify either what community they live in or what zip code. Probably around here, you would want to list you would list some communities around here because I know people come into town to, go to the various parks along the waterfront and stuff. That's one type, that's a general survey. Another type of survey that we do is, I brought a copy, I made a quick one for you. Get it here. We do something like this. Anybody have their camera or their phone? Put it on camera.
Oh, QR
And
code.
take a QR code.
Yep. So is this something you put in the paper, put at the parks?
The parks. You getting it?
Yep.
Okay, I did a real simple
You
one.
want to just pass it around?
Sure.
We can all get it.
Sure. What I did, I just wanted to do a quick one. This is a technique that we use a lot lately. You can create a survey for each one of your parks, okay? Especially if you want to determine the geography of usership. So we have a survey, it's on a laminate cards. DPW puts them at different locations in the park. When people come in, they always have to, out of curiosity, they take a picture to get the QR code. And then it has a question, basically, where do you live? And how long are you staying? Just a couple of questions that they can answer within a minute. And then we can compile that for each one of the parks to find out what the draw shed is, the pedestrian shed is for each one of the parks where people are coming from. Is it mainly a local residents? Is it a park that attracts people outside of the city? Is it a regional park? So if you have 5 or 6 or 7 parks, you can do one for each park, and that way you get the results. So you're not doing one survey and trying to figure out, parsing it what park it is, but you're actually getting a survey for you, these are users, okay? So these aren't people that think they may use the park, or maybe they used it 10 years ago. These are people that are using it right now. And then you can keep those up for a period of time. So maybe when you have your highest utilization, May, June, maybe July, you put these out, and then that way you get an idea of, is it residents, is it seasonal? And then from what, if it's residents, from what general area they're coming from. So then you use that you use that and compare it to some of the results in the general survey. So you've got general survey information, and then you've got information that's very granular right down to the parks. And we find a lot of success with it, especially the park surveys. People like to take them.
I think the curiosity factor is a thing.
Yeah, and these could be passive parks, active parks, hiking trails. Sometimes we put them at trailheads where people will either, if it's a water trailhead where they go to kayak or canoe, or where they mountain bike, we get some pretty good information from.
Good. Wonder if it would be good if Sarah just went through her presentation on what we're looking at with our survey,
Sure.
and then maybe
Yeah.
give us some ideas.
Did Rich already share this with you?
Uh,
We didn't share the presentation, all I shared them with the background of why we're.
Okay, and so it's not too much, different from the background, but basically, in the past, or still currently, West Traverse and Little Traverse have an agreement with the city to support a couple of our parks. And we're realizing as time goes on, the usership may be, or our guess is, the usership may be beyond just city residents. That we are attracting,
Sure.
individuals from our local communities to come and use our parks. And as a result, we're wondering if these townships and other townships may be able to provide us some additional funding so we can continue to have the parks look the way that they do, increase different recreation opportunities, and, to be able to do add-ons as a result. So historically, the Little Traverse Township, West Traverse contribute towards Zorn, Kiwanis, and the skate park. But obviously, we've had some big changes to those parks as time goes on. So our goals were to figure out, where do people live, what parks are being utilized the most, where should we kind of put our efforts into? And we would like to eventually go back to the townships and say, hey, here's our data. Would you be willing to contribute more to the park systems, for, which hopefully, we can show that their residents are using
Sure.
as well. So what we thought was important is that it was easy to complete. We thought electronic format was important. We thought it was also important to include maps or just general information about the parks within the survey. So for example, when we say, asking them which parks have you used, and we list the parks, we don't just list the parks, because sometimes people don't know Cosequat is actually Cosequat, for example. They're not associating the actual park with the name. So hopefully being able to tie in and make those connections. We thought we would share this out electronically through school newsletters with the partnerships. There's a lot of groups that partner with the parks, whether, the Chamber of Commerce, we've got the downtown, the DDA, the Little League, like just the different organizations help them to share this. We thought a QR code as well. And then here were the general questions that we came up with that we're hoping that you can help guide us and give us some of your expertise and feedback on how we can make these questions.
And just to elaborate on that, I did plug all these questions into SurveyMonkey.
Okay.
To do like a draft, just so we could kind of see them in a survey format, if that's
Okay.
helpful.
Yep. So what's your residency? Where do you vote? Kind of figuring out which township people are living in. Check the boxes of which parks you visited in the last 12 months. There's where we would have the map and the list of all the parks that we have. In the past 12 months, how often have you participated in a Parks and Recreation program? So between like the Fall Fest and the sledding events and the Easter egg hunt and some of the other recreation programs, yoga in the park, that type of thing. Which Parks and Recreation programs did you participate in? So listing which ones. So those two connected. How would you prefer to receive updates and information? So just trying to figure out, how do people want to be communicated about the upcoming activities, events, or things that are going on within the parks? what other activities, so more of an open-ended question for this one, and then additional comments. So trying to keep it short and concise to gather the most information. So I kind of already hit on this, how to distribute. And we thought we'd start off with May and June, look at what our responses are, and then determine if we need to get more responses to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, another well, you're doing May and June, you're getting awful close to tax season. We found that another source is to put the flyer in with the tax bills.
Interesting.
The other thing, though, I would caution you on in terms of residency, just from last week, when we had our meeting at the planning commission, 50% of the people in the audience said they were from Harbor Springs and they weren't.
Right.
People from Birchwood think they live in Harbor Springs. Harbor Springs goes all the way up to Redmond Township. So when you ask and the other part is, you would like to, if this was more of a populated area, you could get away with saying, list your zip code, but the zip codes are too big too. You may want to, in order to get granular, you may want to put things in like I tried on the survey. Harbor Point, Week-Tonsing, Birchwood, some of the bigger developments, because people all think they may live in Harbor Springs and they don't. And if you're trying to build up a database of people outside the community that come in, then you want to make sure you collect those responses in order to have that data.
I think they had a question about where do you vote? Wouldn't that give you that information?
Yeah, so our thought was, where do you vote, and then have a drop down that
Yeah,
lists
that-
all the townships.
Okay, that's one way, yeah. You got to make sure that you ask that
Because most people don't know what township they live in until you're like, well, where do you go vote? And they're like, oh, West Travis.
And I found that some people, even though they live in a township, they still affiliate with the nearest city.
Yeah.
So they may say they may live in West Traverse, but they go, but yeah, getting to where they vote, they should know where they vote. They
Right.
should know where they have to go to vote.
Yeah, what we've been struggling with is, we're looking at doing maybe 7 townships. Because Pleasant View, we know there's a big population there, people that are coming in to use the parks. Up by Goodhart, Friendship Township, Redmond, et cetera. And the challenge is, how do we get the surveys to them?
Do it through their tax bill.
So if the city, the supervisors were willing to include that, we're not sure if they are. But the tax bills will be going out in July, would that be right?
They go either the very end of June or July,
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
but we've done master plans with some of the townships, and we've done the tax billing, flyer. We've actually created, and you can do this, we created the flyers, but then we made sure that we had the markings that when they cut them, they fit right into the envelope. So the treasurer doesn't have to do any extra work. Yeah, and or you could already have them printed and cut, because they all go in a standard business envelope, that it's just easy for them just to stuff them.
Would you just put a QR code on that?
Yeah.
Document?
We put the QR code in the URL, but we find most people nowadays just take a picture of it, and do the QR code.
Yeah.
Even older people,
What's that?
even older people.
Oh, yeah.
We have so many people.
Everybody got it here.
Yeah.
Young and
The other thing that you can do, and I'd have to get a cost. We've used this before. We buy cellular data. And the cellular data can be filtered to show where people are for any period of time. And then if you look at it at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, it shows where they live. So we did that in Charlevoix with their park plan. We bought cellular data for their main city parks. And then we mapped it at night and found how far people come to go to the parks just based on their cell phones.
It's funny you mentioned that, because we had somebody come forward that was willing to help us with that.
Yeah.
And our first reaction was, oh no, people will freak out. They didn't even like the Hallmark channel.
People don't even, every day that they use their phones, they're providing that data.
So you got no negative feedback in Charlevoix?
They know that is happening though. They probably don't even know it's happening.
No, I mean, all of us that have cell phones every day, it's being.
Right.
It's happening right now.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about something and get on social media later.
Yeah, we can get data. For example, we could take Taco Bell over on 31,
Mhm.
and we could buy the cellular data for that area. And it would tell us everybody in the last, we could pick the day, and it would give us an idea of where everybody comes from based on their cell phones.
So how would you get a sample for something like park users? You use more than one day probably, right?
You'd use you could use a day or a week, depending on how much data you
So
want
the
to buy.
cost depends on
Yeah.
how long.
And the data is pretty cheap, actually. So,
Hmm.
So that would tell us how many people were in a Marina Park, or how many
Yes.
people were at the beach or whatever.
And then where they went home that night.
yeah, we just did we ran a visitor analysis for Boyne City.
Uh-huh.
And we didn't do it by specific location, we just did it for the city to find out exactly how many visitors come in during the summer. And then we found for the month of July last year, they had almost 500,000 people that came into the community.
That's amazing.
And then it shows exactly what the primary zip codes are that they come from. So it gave us the top 10 zip codes of where people are coming from to go into Boyne City.
Do you think we could drill it down farther than just like 49740? I mean.
Yeah, I think you could.
Like, so you can even actually get to the townships then, do you think?
With the cell data?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Cause it'll show their address.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wherever your phone's registered.
And what we did is when we do it, we pick the park and then we analyze it for the day. And then we look at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, thinking that under the assumption by 8 or 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, somebody's home. So we look during the day and then we find out where that phone is at 10 o'clock at night
Right.
in order to find them.
This is really encouraging. I don't know, we would just have this sort of knee jerk, like people are gonna freak out, but so would you advise telling people or no, because it happens all the time and
The data is out there to buy
yeah.
right now. You could go and buy it if you knew how to,
It
because
already
it comes in a large
Yeah.
string. If you know how to parse it, the data's already there.
So we have a resident here that his profession was exactly what you're explaining. And he created a sample, his old company created a sample. And we did it by the park. And then they did it on an annual basis. And so we only did like Marina Park, but it was on an annual basis. And exactly the type of data you're speaking of is what you come up with.
Yes.
Find out where the phone is sleeping, and
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Is he proposing we would pay for this through his old company or?
Yeah, I think it's about $1,000 per location. Now, that was for an annual report. For example, we can say how many people are using the boardwalk. And we would know how many people are using that, who's using it.
Yeah, you can geolocate, you can create a boundary around something and then they just analyze the cell data that's within that district. It's pretty it's kind of spooky, but it's out there. I mean, you can buy the data. I mean, the data's available. So, but we've used cell data to get a broad perspective of what the total kind of like the service area is for the park. And people are always surprised about how far people come to recreate.
So interesting. So ballpark cost, we don't really have much of a budget.
Well, I could, Rachel, if you wanted to contact, there's a company down in Charlotte, Michigan called Cobalt 360. We use them periodically. They're pretty reasonable. Cobalt, COBALT 360 out of Charlotte, Michigan. And it's a small firm, but that's the kind of stuff that they specialize in. You can give them a call and ask them. I don't think it's too unreasonable. I think all of the data that we paid for Boyne City only cost us $800 for all of the data that we were able to get.
That's amazing. Well, we
So
can
if
get that
we
back
did this-
easily by trying to get more money from the townships to
Mhm.
share the cost of, we could justify that.
So does this take the place, do you think, of like an electronic survey?
No, it's supplemental.
All the other stuff? Yeah.
And I'm wondering thoughts on, do we do a QR code, the survey that we have, and if we don't have enough information or the townships then come back to us and say,
Mhm.
we want more, then we move forward with a cost
Yeah.
product like
Cause that would
this.
be more a July, August,
Right.
Absolutely.
we're not doing that in May or June.
Right.
You're not gonna
That could
get
just be our
bad
phase two.
results. Yeah, you could do May or June, Maybe we can see where we're at the end of May, beginning of June. I don't know how long it takes. I
Possible
can
that
at least
we-
reach out.
Yeah, that we get enough data to take to the townships already at that point.
Yeah,
We have to get on
I
their
would
agenda for
recommend,
June or
you know,
July.
because doing the Survey Monkey is, you know, it's not expensive. I would do this type of survey the way that you got it mapped out here as a general survey. But then I would do I would take your individual parks and do kind of like what I showed you, that example. So you get park usership. So if you go to West Traverse Township, you can tell the supervisor, this park gets X number of use by your residents. And then you're able to quantify it by saying, we actually did a survey in the park for people that were there using it during the period.
Would the cell data give us the same information though?
It would,
If we
but,
wanted to ask other questions.
but if you wanted to
it
ask
wouldn't,
other
yeah.
questions, you could get that type of data.
So do you guys like the idea of putting a slip in the tax bill to get at everybody?
I do.
Yeah.
I think that'll help us reach more than, I mean, we can send it out
Yeah.
to the school still, but that'll help us reach more people that we didn't necessarily know how to get a hold of first.
Okay, so like if somebody got it in their tax bill, but they'd already gotten the flyer at school and filled it out, then Survey Monkey knows that email's already.
No, it knows, it tracks it by IP address. So if you take it on your phone and then you take it again on your phone, it won't.
Sure.
Unless
Okay.
you check multiple times, the default is you can only take it from one IP address.
Oh, that's good.
I would,
I mean, multiple people from the same house could take it.
oh, yeah, but you want that.
Yeah,
Because those will be different IP
Well, I
addresses.
know my wife and I don't always agree on the same thing.
exactly, yeah.
And, you know,
You're
so
gonna get
you
more data
you get
too.
more data. And then you want the kids that have access to an iPad or an iPhone, they can take the survey too, and you get their information, which I think is just as important.
So with
If you had
Survey
some-
Monkey, I learned myself the hard way by doing one. The only way to get somebody's email is actually to have Survey Monkey send it out. And that's not possible if we're gonna do a mailer.
That's correct. But as in this survey here, you can ask somebody if they want to be notified in the future. If they give you their email,
Right.
then you can harvest that and use that for other purposes.
In January of 2020, just right at the beginning of COVID shutdown, there was a parks survey that sent out. And there was a little more than 200 responses. And there were over 400 comments. And it showed where do they, you know, what township do they live in, and where are they from? And it was in January. So, and then we did another one in what, 22?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good one.
and 42 people responded. I don't know what month, I'd have to look at it again.
That's what too.
But then only 42 people responded, so
Well, just because you get this slip in your tax bill doesn't mean you're necessarily gonna take the survey, so it's
Right.
not gonna be 100% thing. anyway.
Yeah, the other one, I know that Harbor Light is used.
That's what it-
I'd put a small thing in Harbor Light with the QR code.
but if you do the electronic, okay, you can do it for a year, you know. How many people went to that park over the last 12 months?
If you keep it open, yeah, because Survey Monkey will track the date and time that they took the survey, so you could build a record that way as well.
When you do the QR codes in each individual park, just like on and this isn't for this survey, but for future ones, are those all individual different Survey Monkey surveys then?
Yes.
Okay, so you could have 12 surveys going at the
You just
same.
gotta pair the survey for the park and then
Correct.
ask it to develop the QR code and make sure that goes to that park.
Okay,
But yeah, you could run 12 of them.
Yeah.
Almost simultaneously to start harvesting data on park users.
I'm just curious, does Survey Monkey do you have an annual subscription? You can do as much as you want
yeah,
or?
the city does.
Okay,
It can have 3 emails attached to it, but we can do, as far as I'm aware, we can do as many surveys
Oh, yeah, you
as
can,
we
if you
want,
have a
yeah.
subscription, you can do unlimited
Yeah.
service.
So what kind of time do you give this for people, getting the surveys out or the QR codes? Do you give them a month to get a month-long process? Is it a 2-week process?
No, we usually give them a month,
About
but
a
we
month.
find when we run the analytics,
Mhm.
we find that the majority of the survey is taken right after people get the notice. And it goes up and then it starts going down. Now, you may want to put out an ad, like do a blast, you know, when it goes out in the tax bill, you put it in the Harbor Light and then maybe wait 2 weeks and then put another one in the Harbor Light just to remind people that, you know, they get their tax bill and they go, oh, geez, I have until September to pay it. I'm gonna put it over here. And then they forget about taking the survey. So you want to send out a reminder.
We've had discussions about, you know, do you want just one general survey or multiple specific ones? Like this first one, we're trying to get at usership. There's some other questions as well. Since we have like the captive audience with the tax bill looking at the survey, can we ask about like specific projects, or is it better to keep that as a something different?
If you're going full tilt with a large survey, I would say, how, you know,
Ask about-
just be upfront and say, people, if you're gonna take the survey, it's gonna take 10 minutes. Or,
People away.
Yeah.
what?
That would turn me away.
Well, we have them that last 15 to 20
Yeah.
on some detailed ones, and we get about an 85% completion rate. But we really get some really good data out of it. But what you're doing here with this type of survey, it shouldn't take anybody that long to take it. So I wouldn't worry about putting in some specifics.
I go back to Rachel's point about specifics. If we're talking about specific projects that city residents are paying for.
Townships don't, my
Township.
hesitancy to put in larger projects is the townships, if this is about cost sharing, they don't contribute to large projects. Those are through the city, so the taxpayers pay for those, like the boardwalk, for instance, or the wheelway. So to ask on this survey to get township cost sharing about other projects kind of isn't fair in my mind, because they don't really have a say on what the priority list is. So my thought or our thought was, with some communication, was to do a more specific survey for township sharing. And then I'll do a larger survey, which like QR codes in the park that may do it.
What do they pay for?
They pay for like, so for the skate park, it was to have skate park staff, general maintenance, things like that. Cause they just put in the skate park right now, not Cozaquat Park as a whole. And we've added pickleball since then. The skate park's had a really major update. We also have a playground update going in up there. They put it into the city beach, so that plays for the lifeguards. And Jamie I didn't say it at our last meeting, but made a really good comment about why they use City Beach. Cause if the answer is lifeguards, out of all the beaches in the area, that's massive. They're expensive. That's the most expensive thing in our parks budget are the lifeguards. And then what else did they put into? Kiwanis Park, which is the building up there in the disc golf course, which we've also made improvements to over the past couple
Is
of
there
years.
any other disc golf, like other than Petoskey? Is there anything north of here?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
there's Bliss.
Yeah, and then there's, I think there's one down in.
I think there's one in
Hornsey.
Boyne too now,
Yeah.
yeah.
So John, with I assume the IP address will be recognized whether you do it on a phone in a park, you know, scan the QR code, and then you go home and you get your letter in the mail as part of your tax bill, and you say, oh, I'm gonna do this survey. The Survey Monkey would recognize, I mean, there's two different devices here, is there?
No, there's two different surveys, so when you're,
Oh, so the survey in the park would be separate.
be separate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so then people can do it in the park and they can also do it with
Correct,
whatever
with the
we
general
done on their
survey,
tax bill.
yes.
But I think if you do it, the surveys in the park should be like 3 questions.
That's
Yeah,
it.
that was like the really short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would be a separate project than what the survey we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really trying to get at what Rachel's saying, where like at the skate park, you really want to find out where people are coming from, then that survey would say, just very quick, where are you from?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be it.
Yeah.
So that way she could go to the West Traverse Township Supervisor saying, you know, 32% of the people that used the skate park in these 2 weeks, they came from your township. So that's where
To
those
me-
little surveys come.
Yeah, to me, this is like a black and white survey. And then when we do a general parks, it could be putting QR codes in the park, you know, still a Survey Monkey one that's longer, and we say, hey, this is gonna take more than 5 minutes, something like that. And then if we need to go further with where are you from, that data collection is awesome. I mean, that'd be helpful in
Yeah.
numerous avenues, not just
Sure.
the townships. That'd be awesome information to have, no matter what.
So we're gonna wait then on, trying to get at what, residents' priorities are then.
I don't think we're gonna wait long, but we will wait for the summer till everyone, you know, we don't wanna hear.
I just really
I feel like that's
like the tax.
another valuable place to put a QR code in the tax bill, because it's, then you're only getting the residents' opinions on those big projects.
Yeah, that could be a separate QR code. just for
And it
city
could be,
residents.
and it could be 4 questions.
Yeah.
Like,
That brings up a good point. Should we see if we can get it in the tax bills of the townships?
I think that's the point of this one, yeah, is to get it in the township.
And
But
we're still
will they?
gonna get some general information
Yeah.
from this survey. It's just not gonna be the very in-depth.
Well, you can just tell the townships, we work with enough of them. If you run into a problem, let me know.
Yeah,
Because we work with West Traverse, Little Traverse, Redmond, already. So
so,
I don't think they would, I'm assuming they wouldn't have a problem because they could use the information themselves.
so Little Traverse and West Traverse are already aware. Victor's spoken to their township supervisors, I've spoken to one of them, so they're aware this is happening and they already contribute, so they know it needs to be updated. The other ones we threw in, because the demographics have changed so much, it might be fewer coming from West Traverse and more coming from Pleasant View, or, you know, vice versa. So we decided to throw, yeah, so we put tax bills in all of them.
All
Yeah,
7 of
all
them.
of them, 7 of them.
Yes.
Yeah, so that would be a question now that Victor would make another phone call saying.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, if you ask the residency, which you have here, the nice thing about Survey Monkey is you can cross tabulate the results. So you can just tell the survey when you analyze it, just to print out the results for Cross Village, and it would give you just the results for Cross Village.
Another thing I thought about with the survey today, speaking with Dan, is for this survey specifically, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I was thinking out loud, is do we care what their residency is? I mean, if they're full-time, part-time, they're still coming from a township. If they're a visitor, they're not gonna know where they're staying. There's no way unless we're physically asking them. If they, because most like short-term rentals is what I'm saying, you're gonna say the Petoskey Harbor Springs area. They're not gonna say West Traverse Township, because no one wants to go on their vacation to West Traverse Township, so.
Yeah, they remember what is in West
So I
Traverse.
guess my point is, why are we asking it?
Mhm.
And does it really relate? I think we just put it on there because we put it on all of our surveys. I never really thought about it, to be honest. When we do a more general one, I
Keep
can
it
see
short
it,
and
but for
simple.
this, I don't really.
The outlets that we're sending this to, you know, tax bill
Right.
and school and
Mhm.
social media, the majority of those people will be
Full-time,
full-time year round.
right? So I guess my question is, do we need it on
This
there?
question, yeah.
Well,
It'll
the,
be interesting.
the issue with residency is that Networks Northwest last year did a analysis of seasonal impact in each of the counties. And I believe they found for Emmett County that population here increases 59% in the summer. So from a capacity point of view, I would want to know when my greatest population is going to be here. So to me, residency, the seasonal residents, their population is actually more than the year-round residents are in the
Yeah.
community. So,
I mean, it's gonna take someone 2 seconds to answer it,
Yeah.
so I can say.
So my follow-up question is to get around that question, because with the visitor, we're missing that visitor, because we don't know actually where they're staying. Does it make sense to also do physical surveys in the park, like myself going to the beach on like a peak Saturday and
not if you
asking?
use the QR code
Okay.
method,
Okay.
people will take them.
Okay,
Can you just have a little
Yeah.
checkbox that's there?
yeah,
Yeah.
yep, that's what we have now.
Would it be
So I guess
helpful to
we-
know if you're a visitor, if that person is staying in the Harbor Springs area?
Yeah, I don't know if there's a different way to
And
word it. I
but
mean-
that won't really sort it down to. the
I mean,
township.
is it
Does it
enough of a
matter?
percentage to matter, I guess?
Yeah,
Good question, but-
If we're thinking of trying to put them in the tax bill, that means a lot of printing, right? Do we have any idea how many copies we're talking about? Try to do
That's
this.
1,200 in Harbor Springs.
Yeah.
right?
Don't Harbor Springs, so I'm talking about all the townships.
Yeah, it shows the population of. each
and it's
of the
gonna be
townships.
like 3 per page, because you're gonna. we're gonna
Yeah.
3 per
cut 'em.
page.
It'll be
Right.
cheaper
like-
than mailing
Yeah,
them.
so like
Yeah, right.
for Harbor Springs, if you have 1,200, that's 400 sheets. That's less than a ream of paper. And then you have to look at how much data you're gonna get for that, and it's quite a bit.
We have the 6 other townships.
Yeah, I agree to get it out in physical format. That's the best way to do it, besides doing like a postcard
And I think
mailing,
we
or by
will
the time you're done, it'll
We'll
be
reach audiences.
very expensive.
Exactly, so
Yeah,
that's something
like-
the city
like
can print
all
all
the
of that.
residents,
Yeah.
Okay, my question comes back then to where do you vote? If we're talking about this substantial amount of seasonal residents,
They go elsewhere.
they vote elsewhere.
And they can hit
So-
other,
Right, but
Yeah.
then are we missing out because in theory, if they own a home in Pleasant View Township and they're using our parks, they're contributing tax wise to Pleasant View Township still, right, for their residents? So do we need to rephrase that to?
Do you
where
have a residence in one of these?
I feel like if we did that, we would almost want to do like split it out to Harbor Point, Weequahic, Birchwood, because then we know what township those places are in. And I think if we just said what township, they don't know. They're gonna say,
I mean, do you have any recommendations on that? Versus where do you vote?
I don't. I think if you're trying to get where the seasonal people are, they're gonna identify by the location of their unit. So they're people that are seasonal that come here to Harbor Springs are gonna say Harbor Springs. Somebody that goes to Birchwood may say Harbor Springs. I mean, I saw it last Thursday. People got up and said they were from Harbor Springs and but they said they lived out at Birchwood.
You know that.
So you may want to put the names of some of the larger developments in there so people can
Correct.
select.
Kind of like how we did for the parks, like Cozaquat,
Right.
unless we're gonna split it up separately.
Do you put Friendship Town, or not Friendship Township, do you put West Traverse Township and then behind it in parentheses, put
Birchwood.
some of the
Yeah.
different residencies that fall within there, so that way we can still
Right.
say this is West Traverse?
that might
That's
help.
a good idea.
Yeah, you can do it that way.
That's where the point is.
Yeah, you can do it that way, but we
Yeah.
all know that Birchwood is in West Traverse, so if they select Birchwood, we know that they're a West Traverse resident.
It's just that, is that more data to then compile versus if we just said West Traverse and put?
And then describe.
Well, you could put in-
You have West Traverse and Birchwood on
Right.
two different bubbles, so.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want, you have to be, you don't want people thinking that if you say West Traverse, Birchwood, that's the only
Right.
selection that they have,
Right.
you
If
know?
you put West Traverse Township in parentheses includes
Yeah.
Birchwood,
Mhm.
comma, so just.
If you
put
did
in
it that
some
way,
individual
yeah.
development,
Yeah.
so they would identify
Yeah.
West Traverse.
And a good example of that is we did that for our parks. So Kiwanis Park, if someone didn't know it as Kiwanis Park, they assumed it was a disc golf course. We put Sled Hill Trails Disc Golf
Yeah.
Course.
Right.
Cozaquat, playground, skate park, pickleball. They have, a lot of people, there's no sign for Cozaquat Park, so they don't quite understand. Zoll Street, everyone knows is the dog beach, so we kind of laid it out,
Right.
a little simpler.
Yeah, you could put West Traverse and then in parentheses includes Birchwood and then list a couple of them so they know.
Right,
Yeah.
and Redmond includes
That's smart.
Goodhart or whatever.
I think if you do the research and you see the population of the various townships that surround us, you'll get a good idea of how many people live there. They could rent or they could own, but they live there.
So I'm going back to this question, sorry, how do we rephrase this? Instead of saying, where do you vote? Where, do we say, where is your Harbor Springs residency? How do
Where
you?
is your residency?
Yeah.
Technically, they're not gonna be Harbor Springs.
But then that confuses me thinking, oh, if I'm part-time, my residency is other, right?
Leave that question, just like you have.
Okay,
Asking,
where do you vote?
yeah.
Cause then if there,
But then how do we find out who's from like, how do we find out?
could there be a drop down if you click other, like, you know, if you selected other, then answer where your secondary home is, which township it is in, or some way to get that information.
Can we put under seasonal? Is there a way we can change this one to ask that question?
If you click seasonal, which township is your home in?
Something like that, yeah, like where it drops you down to a follow-up.
Can you put where do you vote or where is your second residency or your,
Harbor Springs residency.
Where is your
Yeah.
home in Harbor Springs?
Then they'll just go by the zip code.
We'll give you
Just like
some
where-
where people type in their address.
But if you
Right here.
Well, that's what I'm coming back to though, is like, how are we gonna compile this data in a way, and I'm sure Survey Monkey gives us some beautiful graphs and charts. If we're getting that at that seasonal, and then all of a sudden we have all this different information, how do we then take that and make it fit with the previous question? I think it would be nice to find a way to phrase it, to find out where are they
Is
located?
there a way to say,
Where are they?
what if we,
Paying their tax bill to?
I think we could assume that most of our park users are seasonal residents and not, well, I mean, I think that's a safe assumption that our park usership goes, I don't think, we really need to find that out personally. I mean, we can all guess that. So if we ask, where do you vote? We can assume they're a full-time resident, if they answer that question. Can we change, what is your residency to
If you were
Yeah.
seasonal.
if you were a seasonal resident and then drop them and just like assume if you vote here, you are a full-time resident. And
Yeah.
then if they're seasonal, does that make sense? I know it still seems kind of
Or is it
confusing.
In the same way, I don't know if Survey Monkey has the capability to do this, if like the what is your residency was the first question. If they hit visitor, just skip the where do you vote, is that possible? And if they click full-time or seasonal, then it will ask you what township?
You can do logic.
Okay.
So on that question, what is your residency? If they picked full-time year-round, then if the logic then would say, okay, if you check that, then you're gonna go to this question that says, where do you
Yeah.
vote?
So that needs to be the first question.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
make that the first question, and then if you click full-time year-round, it'll say, where do you vote? If you click seasonal, it can say, where is your
Is your
seasonal home located?
Right, does
Yeah.
that make sense?
And then
Yeah.
visitor just moves
So
on.
Yes,
I'm not gonna show you how to do it, but if you just go to the logic tab,
we'll be able to play
we've
around
got
with
survey,
it, yeah.
go to logic. Okay, see, it says if it says year-round, you would say then if they click year-round, it says, then you pick the page.
Gotcha.
And then it'll take you to that page, and then when you're done with that, it takes you back to the next question.
I honestly find where do you vote a really, really confusing question. I think it'd be better just to ask, where do you live? Where's your, if you're up
People
there,
don't know.
where's your
The issue
home
is
located?
People don't know. Like, it's very surprising how many people call here to vote, like, all the time. I'm not exaggerating. All the time people call here.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And we're like, you don't live in Harbor Springs.
Jeff
You don't
gets,
live in Harbor Springs.
So
Like,
if they actually live in Good and they say, I don't know where to
Yeah.
vote, I mean.
Training question,
Yeah.
West Traverse.
then it gets their address, you know, you're in West Travis.
So they would vote in West Village, now live in Good Heart?
When I do that, you're just in time.
So that's really
I had that a lot.
Yeah, I believe they still vote in Cross Village, yeah.
So that's pretty.
The city of Harbor
confusing.
Springs, who votes in the city of Harbor Springs, is like a mile
Mhm.
radius. Everyone else.
I'm the last house.
Yeah, and it is fair, that it's confusing, absolutely, but it is very confusing.
So Rachel, if you use logic for your residency question, and if somebody selects full-time, then you create a new page where the vote is in, then it'll take them there, and then they can pick where they vote.
Township.
Okay.
And then the same thing for seasonal then,
It'll
the
take
sec,
them to-
you can say, what is your seasonal residence? And then we can have the same list with the parentheses of the
Mhm.
biggest
Yeah.
association, and we can gather that information that way.
I think that makes way
Me,
more
that's,
sense.
Yes.
yeah, it separates it out.
Yes.
Well, perfect, that's problem solved.
Mhm.
Do we have any other questions as a group for?
Do we feel like, we have to come out of our budget to print these? I mean, I think we probably print that much stuff to put in the packet last week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can come out of our budget, yeah, that won't be.
We don't have to,
Do you have an opinion on if you like questions with options versus open-ended?
I try to stay away from open-ended, because if you get a lot of response, then you have to read through them.
And compile it yourself?
Compile it yourself, try to figure out what the general themes are.
The other thing with open-ended, what we learned from the city master plan, which isn't a necessarily bad or a good thing. But a lot of the open-ended questions wanted a dog park in the city of Harbor Springs. So when you leave it open-ended
Right.
and you
I
get
get things.
100 answers that say we want a dog park, but we have nowhere to put a dog park in the city limits, we're gonna look kind of like,
Don't want to
well,
give
this
any
was on the
hope.
survey, why didn't you do it? Like, well,
You don't want to give any hope.
exactly.
You can put frequency questions in, like, you can list all your parks down the column. You have a frequency question in?
Yeah, how often in the past 12 months?
But you can do that as a matrix question in here where you have the frequency as the columns. And then you list all your parks, so somebody can go for each park, they can pick the frequency. So
Oh, yeah.
So you-
That eliminates having to do two questions.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you can do a frequency question with the matrix question in there.
Yeah, so 4 and 5 would be together.
Yes.
Not 3 and 4.
Right, because we changed it up a little bit. So that open-ended question, what other activities would you like Parks and Recreation to offer? We should create a list of potentials.
It,
And then
yeah.
put other instead of,
This could also get some of the priority things like trails, playgrounds, skating rink.
great, here we go.
Yeah, the other part with Survey Monkey that I like is we force people to rate. Rate or
How
rank.
important, yes, very important.
That's a
Not
very important, yeah.
No, they have the ability in the program, if you had like 10 priorities, you could ask them, here are 10 of our priorities. How would you rate them? 1 being the most important, to 10 the least. And then the survey lets you go through and rank them. So people are actually ranking the priorities which are important to them instead of just selecting important.
That's kind of like forced ranking though, like.
It
what if
is,
2 things are both really important.
it is,
but
and
one comes out.
it's forced ranking, yeah, yeah.
So do you guys want to like then think of like some of the stuff that we're looking at for our projects, but just keep it general, just like ice skating or
Yeah, I think we can. list
sledding?
Well,
or-
make sure, are you gonna use this for your 5-year rec plan?
No, we just
No.
did it in 20, that's why I wanted to hold off, because those surveys have to be done within a year of redoing it for DNR, I think.
And when did you do your 5-year rec?
We just did it in 2022, 22, yeah. That's why, like, I love the QR code and all the different parks and like those bigger surveys, that'll be perfect for our master plan, but it's too early to do it yet.
Yeah. Because DNR likes it when you test in your survey.
Yeah.
Park projects. So if you have a couple of key park projects that you know you're gonna go after grant money, then you toss those in so you can see how strong the
Yeah,
the-
so like
yeah.
some of our big stuff.
Yeah.
And that's something we have to think about. If we do a really big survey this summer, we're gonna be putting out a really big survey again in a year and a half
Yeah.
to do our master plan.
Yeah.
We don't wanna like
Don't
you know,
overstay.
yeah, don't over survey people, stop taking them.
I
It would
don't,
just be one more question.
I don't
Right,
think.
yeah.
So it wouldn't, yeah.
I don't think we have to do a really big survey this summer, like we're doing this, but then if we just put the QR codes at even just a couple of parks
I agree.
and like at the beach and it says like, why is this the beach you choose to come to? Like because of lifeguards, the convenience of the downtown, the parking.
I would actually ask that question in this, because if the townships come back and their answer is we choose the city of Harbor Springs Beach and not any of the inland lake beaches because we have lifeguards, that's something to take to the townships, and that's our biggest budget item, and that's why they're using it. So that's why I think that's a great question to add to this one. And then another survey we could do that's really short over the summer is just rank these projects. Very simple, because that's really all we need.
I think that should go in the Harbor Springs tax bill.
Yeah, yep, and that would go in the Harbor
Right.
Springs tax bill. But 2 smaller surveys and then do a really large one when we're ready for our master plans. We're not,
I agree.
you know,
That's good.
oversaturating people.
That's good. Because right now we have 3 major projects, Kiwanis, the Eastern Boardwalk and the Wheelway. And it would be good to know what people think.
Where they land,
Right, I like to comment about the DNR too.
yeah.
For the next
Yeah.
grant.
You're wealth of information.
Yes.
So glad you came.
Yep, happy to provide.
So you like to join the board?
Right. Do we have any other group
Yeah.
questions for
Yeah.
John while he's here?
I guess getting back to the, where people live or where they vote, however we want to put it. Do we have easy access to what communities would be part of that? Like, for example, Little Traverse would be, Weekatansing, Monongalia. You know, kind of laying out some, you know, communities that we know of that they may not be aware necessarily that they're part of that township. So is that pretty easy to access? We have that
We can just put it
information.
in parentheses.
Pardon me?
We can put it in parentheses.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, put it in parentheses, but I just want to make sure we give lots of good examples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can, Google it all.
The other thing that you can do too is, if you're really concerned about it, you can, SurveyMonkey lets you import in graphics and maps.
Yeah.
Sometimes we put a map in that is strongly delineated, the boundaries. And then we just code them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we just ask people, where do you live? And then they find it and they pick the number and then
They don't have to say West Traverse.
they don't have to
Yeah.
say West Traverse.
That's smart.
Good idea.
Just backing up for a minute, so what do we say about like, activities? Do we want to put it in the survey?
I think we are, but we're gonna give them specific, or we just don't ask it.
But I'm just thinking like if we could start to go after some grants, it'd be good to have this rather than having to quick back up and put another survey out, you know? Like
We're gonna have to put another survey out to update our master. We won't have a choice.
I mean,
Yeah.
projects this year,
Oh.
this year.
Yeah, like for example, Kiwanis Park, skating rink,
Mhm.
example. So those things in there that we
Yeah.
talked about trying to do.
Or a picnic shelter that could be rented out. Or,
Right, or more pickleball courts.
yeah, more pickleball courts, more kayak racks.
But they don't contribute to the pickleball currently. They just contribute to the skate park, so we don't really want to ask them what they want there, unless they want to contribute to Cosequat as a whole,
But
right?
if the metrics would show that West Traverse, you know, is hugely excited about, well, let's pick one, like, we're thinking maybe there could be some parks that they're not contributing to right now. Like Ford Park, for example, like if kayaks are really important, then that could
Yeah,
help
the
us.
goal is they will contribute to pickleball courts after this, would be the goal. Pickleball, of course, weren't there when
Right.
this was originally done.
And we can't forget that City of Purple Springs residents will be filling out the survey too. And they might want more pickleball courts, for example.
So the big things then are tuning up the survey, talking to the township managers or supervisors to ask if we can please put this little slip in their tax bill. And
My
that's it,
other
right?
question is, we have Shea Park on this list, and so I was kind of going off. Not related to John anymore, but we have Shea Park on this list. And we have Marina Park on this list, and I think we really need to think about what we want them to cost share into. Are they cost sharing into us changing the trash cans? 'Cause that's every park. So are we talking all 22 parks properties? Or are we talking about when they're actually using an amenity? At Shea Park, are they going to Saturday yoga for Ally? I mean, to me, that's kind of loose. Like,
Yeah.
Ally does her classes donation only, which is amazing. I don't know if we need to charge
Doesn't really have
township
to
residents to be
restrict
using her
anyone
class.
Do that.
My thing with Marina Park is you can picnic, but you can picnic in any park we have technically. You can go 10 live music, but that's free for everyone, so why are we having the townships cost share into the
But
chamber?
is it really free? Like
It's not really,
somebody's
because then none of
paying
our
for
parks are
that
really
to
free, if we
be-
go off that though.
Right, but we're
Like-
paying for it to be maintained for improvements to go on,
Right.
like
We're
that's
providing the
my,
venue.
You know, that.
as a resident, that's what I'm, you know.
Right. No, and I understand that, but that could be said for all of our park
West,
properties. That's my question.
West Traverse only has one park,
Right,
and it's really a passive park.
yeah,
It's very,
Right.
they're in the process of updating their 5-year rec plan, but based on what I know is they really have no facilities. They just own property.
right.
And you're right. If the people come here to picnic, you're
I'm paying
maintaining,
for that.
you're paying.
Well, and
I
when
hope you
we do
enjoyed
the
your-
big
right.
concerts, those
Yeah.
parks have a lot of wear on them.
Right, so my point is then, do we
Grass.
add, if we were tracked by each other last weekend, do we add Ford Park? Like, I don't think we can pick and choose then at that point.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
Like,
Did you ever think about asking a question? Because you're gonna send this out to the surrounding townships. Did you ever think of asking the question? What's your feeling about having a regional recreation authority?
talked about that, and the city's been hesitant to do that, then it gives ownership of our parks technically to the townships. So they've been hesitant.
Just because we asked, do we have to do it?
You don't have to do it.
Well, I think
That makes
maybe
sense.
some of that would come out of the response to the survey, like we have found a lot of people from Pleasant View and a lot of people from all the other townships that are participating. Maybe it's calls up the need for more of an authority.
There's always a question on these type of surveys when you're asking people, like, what do you think is needed? They'll be more than happy to tell you what it's needed, but then when you ask the question, what are you willing to pay for? You get a whole different response. So you have to ask questions that are kind of both ways. I mean, the need and the wants. You have to try to be able to filter that out.
So,
Otherwise,
right.
people are gonna tell you they want everything under the sun.
So my point isn't removing these, my point is then, do we add Jean Jardine Park? Do we add the Deer Park? Do we add the Ford Park? And if we do add Ford Park, how do we take away the boat launch? Because people already pay for the boat launch and have their kayaks there, like how, if we're gonna open that
Do we need to
door, which
start-
may be appropriate, then we have to add all of them.
Well,
I just
say
wonder if
except
we
for
need to
Ford
start thinking of this
Launch.
differently rather than individual parks, like supporting the park system.
And I think the Harbor Commission for the city does have township residents on it. So it's not an authority, but their bylaws allow for Little Traverse and West Traverse, right?
West Traverse and Little
To
Traverse.
have
are both-
two members
Yeah,
on, and we've talked about that for the Parks
Yeah.
Board as well.
Right.
It's like an opening.
or chair lives in West Traverse Township too, of the Harbor Commission. And then in terms of Shea Park, it brings up the question about the Historical Society, because now we're gonna be getting the train engine in there. I'm just kind of wondering if they want any part of this.
I'd be hesitant to open that.
So how do we get at, the township supporting like the broader park scene rather than just individual parks?
Well, I know that West Traverse doesn't really have any active parks. They just own a piece of property. I don't know what Little Traverse is. I don't know if they have any.
No, they don't.
The bottom line is, maybe they don't want to be responsible for them, but the residents use them, so that's really the pitch is that. I don't know if you need to parse it out by individual park, but it's like you go to them and say, okay, you have a park, but it's just passive. And you don't have a park, so your residents all come to us. So you pitch the idea, how much, what would be a fair annual stipend that they pay you for their residents to come here and enjoy the parks that the residents here are paying for.
So would it make sense to just put Zorn City Beach and then ask why these, because they already fund into that, and that's very specific. We have the lifeguards.
Just
Cozaquat
Yeah.
Park and list the things, Kiwanis Park, so the three they already put into, and then do other parks and list all those and have a map. And then we just have a general idea that they're coming to all of them as a park system.
Might still be helpful to see which parks are getting the most usage.
Yeah, I
That's
lean
where our
towards-
money's coming from.
I lean
Good
toward
point.
listing them all.
It wouldn't hurt anything if that's.
And then I'm assuming Survey Monkey can help us differentiate, right? Like we can pull data for just
Well,
the,
you can cross tabulate that question right there. You could ask Survey Monkey, take all of your people that live in West Traverse and then take that question and you would see how they're broken out. So you could see what parks people from West Traverse are using versus Little Traverse versus Pleasant View.
So we just put all our main parks. in.
Yeah, I say we list them all then.
Yeah.
You list them all and then you can cross tabulate, so you can see what.
I know before I said don't add the Deer Park, but looking at this list, having Marina Park and Shea Park, that's telling me we should have them all on there. Otherwise, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, you might draw the line somewhere like the Shea Scenic Overlook or whatever
Yeah.
that is.
Right, that's the line, Tuttle Park, is
Turf
obviously a
Park, I
line,
don't know,
like,
yeah.
But I think Jean Jardine / Deer Park
Can be one.
can be one and
Yeah.
Ford Park can be one. I don't
And
know
you
that,
can put Ford Park excluding the boat launch.
boat launch, yeah.
I don't know that anything else.
But the other reason to list all the parks is people might say, wow, I never knew they had so many parks in Harbor Springs.
We park somewhere.
put your trash somewhere, use the restroom facilities. Yeah.
Yes.
I think if you list all the parks, people will realize how many parks we have in Harbor
Yeah.
Springs.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it looks like we only have like 6 parks.
So I make a motion to take this information back to the original survey committee to shore up the details. And work with Rachel to executing the survey in May.
You
Second
second
that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
But the committee still like to meet after this?
If we've got a couple of minutes to summarize and decide what's next.
Rachel, if you need any help with logic, let me know.
Does anyone from the committee have any questions for John before he leaves? He's been in this building way too much.
Wait.
Like, he needs to leave.
Thanks very much. Nice working with you.
We need
We have a-
Yep.
all right.